At this point, you might have noticed a trend in my videos where I often talk about the problems with the gaming industry and games in general. So today, I wanted to take what might seem like a not such an original topic and put my own spin on it, talking about some of the more positive aspects of games, at least to me. You probably don't need me to tell you this, but the way we experience video games is very different from any other media. They offer ways of engagement that just aren't possible within these other mediums. For example, no matter the outlet, people talk about how they can be engrossed with the characters of a work or the world it created. But due to how video games function, they offer an even greater level of immersion to draw a person in. Sure, you can read a book or watch a movie about a group of high schoolers, and maybe you'll end up becoming attached to a character or two, possibly feeling like you spent a lot of time with them. But games add another layer to it. As you spend that time with and as those characters, you have many of these experiences firsthand, and it can very much feel like these characters even become your friends in some cases. This is because the interactions, decisions, and experiences feel like they've all been directly influenced by you, instead of you just watching them transpire. Even in a game with a linear path, you're still guiding the characters down that path. This is very much why even games with mediocre or bare bones stories can be praised in this medium, when they just wouldn't be held in the same regard if they were books or movies. Some would argue that this is because games just aren't taken as seriously, and while I admit this might be a factor, it's my belief that it's mainly due to the experience they offer. This is the main reason people feel so nostalgic toward older games. When people talk about Ocarina of Time having an amazing story, they probably aren't talking about the lacking main narrative. They're talking about the feeling of an epic adventure, from finding your first sword, to riding on Epona's back over Hyrule Field, to walking up the stairs of Ganon's tower. The way you spend time in these worlds due to the nature of video games can be enthralling. As I said, you feel like you can have a direct influence on the world. The only real alternative to this in other media would be something like a choose-your-own-adventure book, but games offer vastly more than that. The most obvious example here is games with personal choice, where you guide a character down a certain path, or at least the game makes you think you are. However, even in a linear game with low deviation, you are still creating your own experience. Once again, you're the one guiding that character down the path, whether it's figuring out how to get through an area or what built-in equipment you want to use. Everyone takes away a different experience from a game, be it because they've used a different playstyle, discovered secrets others didn't, or they had a particularly frustrating time with one boss or another. I hate this so much. Baby, why are you so bad at this game? I have literally been so good at this game until this level. I have ran past, like, every single level. But for some reason, the second I got to goddamn bullshit ocean... Because I've had enough of this, dude. And it doesn't just end there. Some games even allow you to insert yourselves into the story, by use of a character creator or by going the route of the blank slate, like Undertale. Using Undertale as an example, the main character has fairly little personality of their own, an ambiguous gender, and overall is a tool for you to insert yourself into the game to interact with the characters and the world however you choose to. Then, even a step further, some games let you customize your character to varying degrees, their looks, their abilities, sometimes even certain personality traits, and the character's background, which allows for an even greater degree of self-immersion. No matter if you want to create yourself, your idealized self, or just a character that you would like to play as. I myself, being a 5'3" femboy, usually choose to have these traits on my character, while my co-writer Lynn usually makes her characters pale and blonde, which are traits she also possesses. These things can create a strong connection between you and this avatar. For example, because of this connection, I often project myself onto these avatars that I've created, or the ones that were given to me. Since these characters often don't give much feedback to situations, when I remember those scenes or when I picture them playing out, I see them how I myself, as a person, would react and express myself in these situations. Another manifestation of this that comes to mind is what YouTuber Matthew Matosis mentioned in his Dark Souls 2 critique, how he approached playing the game with a Knight's Code, as this is how he imagined his character would realistically act. I imagine most of you watching this have had some similar experiences, even if not in exactly the same way, which is precisely what I'm talking about. The journey you have is unique to you. Along that journey, you might pick up some knowledge about the world you find yourself in, be that through conversations, item descriptions, or simply by observing your surroundings. The way this lore is presented is again unique to video games. In a book or a movie, the information is given to you, even in cases when it's not direct. In these situations, you're still guided to this information heavily, being shown to you on the screen or through text. While information can still be given in this way with games, there is often additional info you can seek out yourself. While there might be a hint or two to find it, often finding this additional information can truly feel like you were the one who discovered it. Some games even have entire communities dedicated to discovering and decrypting this lore, sometimes finding these years after release. This is something that doesn't exist in the same way in other media. Sure, fan theories exist based on past information, but rarely do said fans find completely new facts within these works. It feels rewarding to discover these things, which in itself is another facet of games not offered in other media: accomplishment. When experiencing a book or a movie, you aren't really given a difficult task. You just sit there and watch or read through something. Granted, getting through some works can be a challenge on its own, but it's not like games. Some challenge you to overcome legitimately challenging tasks, and even games on the easier side put up more of a challenge than sitting down for 2 hours. There could be an argument made for books and movies posing a challenge by being difficult to comprehend, but in the end, their stories move on with or without your understanding, while most games actually come to a halt until you get past the task at hand. You only get to the ending if you overcome everything before it, not just by waiting to get to the end. Though sometimes the challenge is not the game itself, it's another human being who could be interacting with you from anywhere else in the world. While other forms of media have meetups and clubs, rarely can the actual work be affected by other human beings. In games, they might be creating more content for you, helping you get past an obstacle, or simply want to compete against you and become that obstacle. The possibilities have become nearly endless. Developers and players have created entire worlds for themselves to live in, with their own cultures, economics, and etiquettes. Given enough freedom, there might not even be a need for a pre-made narrative, as these worlds' inhabitants create their own adventures and storylines as they go. One of the more interesting examples of how these worlds take on a life of their own is the corrupt blood incident in World of Warcraft that took place on September 13th, 2005. This incident literally caused a plague outbreak within the game's world. This was not some scripted event nor intended to take place in any way. A programming error simply allowed players' pets to carry a raid boss's infectious debuff into the overworld after the battle, leading countless players to their death once contracting the debuff. The cities in the game soon became covered in corpses of deceased players, forcing people to leave urban areas which were now filled to the brim with those corpses, and the city streets literally white with the bones of the dead. Throughout the plague, there were many players who helped others. Healers would offer their abilities to help the infected, while lower level players would guide others to safe areas. The developers themselves even tried to create a quarantine until the problem was fixed. However, due to some players not taking it seriously and going out of their way to spread the disease, this failed. Ultimately, Blizzard was forced to fix this issue by applying hard resets and patch fixes. Experience such as this create a feeling of immersion you just don't experience in other mediums. Video games bring people together. Friendships can still form from any interest, but what makes video games unique is you don't really have to go out of your way to search for people. Sometimes you just end up making friends because you were put on some team in Overwatch and did well together, or you took down a difficult raid boss in Final Fantasy XIV. This happened naturally and is a part of the core experience of many games. I've made the majority of my friends this way. Being shy, even with other hobbies, they rarely led me to interacting with people with similar interests, particularly because that required me to leave my room. With the rise of online games, however, I was put into situations where I had to interact with people, resulting in many friendships I still have to this day. All of this is why the majority of my videos are talking about bad business practices, censorship, and shoddy game design within video games, as well as defending positive aspects, if they come under attack. I complain about these things and make these videos because I care about them. Games are a huge part of my life, which is why I love doing this.